Welcome to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast, Chris Richardson. How are you doing, Chris?
Oh, I'm very well. How are you guys?
I'm very well too. How are you, Stephen?
Magic. I am indeed looking forward to this chat with Chris. It's a lad that we've known for a while and always been in our sights to get on the podcast. And I think now is the perfect moment. So can't wait.
We have seen Chris multiple times whirl his way around the North Inch of Perth, but he's been a wee bit further afield, and we're going to find out a wee bit more about that as we traverse the globe on our way to Tokyo. This is what we're doing. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, Chris, we've heard a fair bit about you for folk like Dave Andrews and that, right? But give us the background story to Chris Richardson, your running journey. Bring us up to date, man.
Okay, yeah, so I'm a runner based in Aberdeen, and I've probably been running for maybe about 12 years now. I first started when I was a student, and it was just a case of procrastinating. Instead of writing my dissertation, I thought I can achieve something today if I go out for half an hour, and then that means that if I twiddle my thumbs for the rest of the day, at least I've done one thing. That was my thought. And then from that ended up, I think a few people at uni said they were going to do the Edinburgh Marathon. So we all signed up, or I signed up. I don't think anybody else actually did it. But then I enjoyed that. That started me off on a bit of an obsession with trying to get my marathon time down for several years. So for a while, I was definitely a marathoner. And then the last 3 or 4 years, I've been focusing on the 100K. And yeah, I tend to, once I start doing something and I get into it, I can get very into it and become quite driven with it. So yeah, the 100K has very much been the driving force for the past few years, which yeah is what brought me to Bangalore last week.
Did you run before uni?
Not really, only in the kind of the way that anybody might if they worried a little bit that they're not getting fit enough or want to be better for rugby or football or whatever I was doing at the time, but not competitively and not seriously.
So if you want to represent your country, sign up for a dissertation, and then you might find the motivation to go and do a wee bit of running. So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, brilliant. Okay.
What was your marathon exploits like? What did you manage to chisel your time down
to? So you mean what's the fastest, or what did I start with?
Well, both, I think.
Well, I started with a 3:21, and then the second one was a 3:21, but then gradually got it to 2:24, and that's where it may well stay unless I go back to the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Locations. You mentioned Edinburgh. Were the other ones in Edinburgh too, or?
Second one was Edinburgh, and I've not been back there since. But no, I've done them quite a variety. So I've done a few in the UK. I did the one in Cheshire that was the kind of lockdowny one. I've done Jersey. I've done London a few times. I don't know if you know, I've done Tokyo. Which is of interest to you guys, but
we'll get to that.
That was really good. Yeah, I think I enjoyed all parts of running, but the marathon always is what kind of has got under my skin as the most interesting to me, and I enjoy the big races as well.
Where did you get your PB?
That was Cheshire.
Right.
It was going to be the Wrexham Marathon, and then they changed the rules in Wales, so they moved it about 2 miles over the border to Cheshire. So actually, the race registration was still in Wales, but the actual running was in England because they had
different pegs.
I think for whatever rules they decided we couldn't do the run in Wales.
Madness, to think that was just so recent that we were doing that. Was that at Diva Stadium? Like, there's something about Chester's football. We got to football quickly. But their pitch, I'm sure, is like half in Wales and half in England. Sits right on the border,
Mm.
and it's called the Diva.
I love the uniqueness of that though. That register in Wales, but actually run in England. That's probably the one and only time that's happened. Was in that year. I also never knew there was a Jersey marathon until you said that. So
yeah, that's quite a nice race. It goes around about half of the island, and so it's sponsored by Standard Chartered, and so as in the shirt sponsored Liverpool.
Yep.
So they normally send out a Liverpool legend, I think, as the deal that Standard Chartered have to be the starter and kind of stand at the finish line sort of guy. So it was Ian Rush was there the year that I did it. So that was the highlight for me, was getting to meet Ian Rush at the end. I was covered in Lucozade and sweaty and slightly confused probably, but I'm sure he didn't mind.
Are you also hinting towards favouring teams who play in red?
Yeah, I am a Liverpool fan and an Aberdeen fan,
Okay.
So yeah, I do favour teams that play in red.
Ian Rush was certainly a legend. What a player, man! What a player!
Standard Charter, Jersey, offshore bank accounts. I'm kinda.
Yeah. That's probably why they're sponsored by Standard Chartered.
Tax havens. Yeah, brilliant. Cheers, Chris. Sorry, that's my line of questioning. Finito for just now.
Sure, he'll be back
I
shortly.
could be back, or I could be back right now if you want. But I better
Another question. Well, I've got a question that you said about the marathon and then the 100k, but there's a bit of a jump there from doing fast stuff at 26.2 miles. There's a bit of a jump to what is 100k? 60 miles ish.
Yeah, 62 maybe. I don't know, but I would actually disagree with you slightly. Definitely it is a lot further and it is a lot slower, but I don't really consider myself much of an ultra person, because when you just the general style and the way that you have to approach most ultras, your 100-milers, even your trail 100Ks or whatever, is still quite different to running around the North Inch, where it's flat and it requires a certain intensity that is a lot more similar to the marathon. Because so I've done 2 ultras that aren't road 100Ks, and there I still feel like a bit of a fish out of water, a newbie. I don't really know what I'm doing. But I think the big change in 100K in the last 5 years or so has been that the people that have come into it, probably myself included, but even more so some of the other guys that are faster marathoners than me, is that people have come from the marathon to 100K and they've treated it like the marathon. And actually, it's almost like the 100K has become marathon plus. There's all these, and so actually, maybe it's because I'm quite comfortable with each of them, but I feel the road 100K and the marathon are quite similar beasts. But if you told me to do a trail race, the Highland Fling or whatever, then I'd probably be on my arse 5 minutes in and kind of struggling with the ups, struggling with the downs, struggling with aid stations. It's there's a similarity.
That's quite an interesting thing, because it's almost like saying 100K is like a long marathon.
Yeah, so the pace is different, the distance is different, but I think the style of training and the style of racing and the kind of intensity that you need and the concentration is the same.
Similar.
Yeah, so I think a few years ago, like ACP was dominated by, certainly in the numbers, was dominated by people that had come from ultras and decided to do a flat road one, whereas now it's dominated by people that come from the marathon, and you see that even at the aid stations. I think because we had one guy that was in the Scotland team a couple of years ago, was a trail ultra guy, and he had a lot of rice puddings, which I think are quite popular with trail runners. But then he stopped to have his rice pudding at the aid station, and Debbie apparently just shouted, "Get a move on at him!" And then suddenly he was inhaling this rice pudding, trying to run it 4-minute kilometers or whatever. And I think that's shows the difference in the. And to be honest, it probably only takes a few seconds to stop and eat a rice pudding, but there's just a different mentality from marathoners to trail runners that at the moment it's the 100K is dominated by the marathoners.
Yeah.
It's like that F1 pit stop, eh? You need just like, every second's a prisoner. And
what I've witnessed at the North Inch is the longest people stops to go for a pee. Any other time it's a case of grab something, go. And I was really interested. It was actually Robbie Britton. I was chatting with Robbie at Perth, and I was being my usual curious self, saying, "What's that? What's that? What's that?" He's saying, "Well, that's just water, John. Calm down." And then there was other like pre-mixed drinks. There was salt tablets, but it was all laid out methodically in the morning. But later on in the morning, it was not as methodical. It was all over the place a wee bit. But it was fascinating that it was just a case of, as Stephen says, that F1 pit stop. But thank you for challenging me on when I'm saying the jump from marathon to 100K. What that's saying to me, Chris, is it's a mindset thing. And the mindset you've got is you're going a wee bit slower because you're doing 100K, you're going different, but the training and the execution is similar. It's a longer distance. It'll take you longer to do it, but the way you're moving your body is very similar to that. So I hadn't thought about it that way. So thank you very much. And I think you're right. A lot of folk come from the ultra distance down the way to do what they think will be a fast road run. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would just add there, I think maybe why I think that is maybe the fact that the pace that I have to run it in the 100K is still slower, but it's still a kind of a bit of a 2 cups of coffee and a slap on the arse sort of pace for me. Like I wouldn't run at 100K pace by choice on my way to work in the morning. Whereas I imagine that if I did, I don't know, the West Highland Way or Lakeland 100 or something that's got serious elevation and got all these kind of technical terrain, that the paces that I would expect to be hitting that might be the same as I'm doing just on a Tuesday morning.
What is that pace you're on to work?
For the 100K, well, 4-minute kilometers is generally what that's what I ran at Perth this year, and it seems to be the kind of agreed pace of lead packs in the 100K at ACP. It's not always what everybody runs, but it's what they try to run.
Okay. And what about that? How does that compare to a 10K to your work or whatever that you spoke about? What if you're doing a tempo 10K or?
Well, if I'm just running to work in the morning, it might be 5-minute kilometers.
Right.
So
you're keeping that intensity up for 7 hours, say, roughly, give or take.
Yeah.
But that's a
contextualize, is it?
That's a different thing as well. That intensity, which we'll come to. Metro Running Club, is that correct?
Yeah. So I've been a member for just coming up to 10 years in January. It will be. So it's a really good club. I can't really fault it too much. The people I've met along the way, and we've got a great training group that are very keen to do some of the sessions that I want to do. So it kind of helps me that there's a lot of marathoners in the club, so that helps. And then also we've got a bit of a kind of a precedent with 100K. I wasn't the first. There was recently there was Kyle Gregg was the guy that kind of started the trend of us doing the 100Ks, and then Jason started at the same time as me, Jason Kelly. We actually had one other member in India. We had Martin Muller in the Germany team. But then before that, I don't think I even have the Metro record. I think Simon Pride was a Metro member when he ran the 100k World Championships. He actually won the World Championships in 1999. And so he's changed up a few times, but I think he might have been Metro at the time. Don Ritchie wasn't Metro, but that was before that. He was in the city before Metro existed as a club.
It's quite phenomenal when you look at the area, the country, the hotbed of 100k runners that have emerged out of Metro in particular, but the Northeast in general as well. It seems to be, and so we've had the chance to get to speak to a few of those people that you've mentioned there, Chris, as well on the podcast. And yeah, it's just I follow you all on Strava, so I see what you are up to. It's quite interesting just watching what you do. Can you actually talk us through what a claymore is?
Yeah, so claymore. We used to actually call it an AECC. The exhibition centre used to be there, but then they demolished it, so we couldn't call that loop AECC anymore. And the road signs say it's called Claymore Drive. So and the segment's called Claymore Cruise. So a claymore is just one lap of that road around an industrial estate. So it's about a kilometre and a half. I think just a few meters more than that, and I actually think it's a perfect loop. It's only recently when people have been trying to encourage us to use other loops that I've realised how perfect Claymore is and maybe that's just me being a creature of habit. But it's what's great about it is it's not entirely flat. There's a bit of down and a bit of up.
Right.
But you can also see a long way around it. So because the negative there is it has a lot of learner drivers use it as well, and there's also a great big crane that parks there and tries to run us over every now and then. But you can see a good 200 meters ahead of you all the time, which means that you can confidently run flat out, knowing if something does come around, you'll be able to jump out the way.
And you're also doing that often in groups, I can see. As solitary, but you're also doing it as your training group as well. What would you reckon your lifetime amount of segments are, if you had to hazard a guess?
For Claymore?
Yeah.
So I think I know this because I saw that Duffy Park I was close to 1,000 a while ago, and I compared the two. So I think that Claymore was just under. So I think Claymore was about 900 or something like that.
Okay.
But then it was over 1,000 for Duffy Park. But Duffy Park's shorter. It's a kilometre.
Yeah, I see Duffy Park a popular one up there as well. I'm always interested in local segments, especially when there's a nice competitive edge between club mates, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, with all the Claymore segments are pretty hot in terms of the leading times on them. So you need probably to. I'm not sure I have any of them anymore, so I think I'd need to create a 50-kilometer Claymore segment and continue around until.
That's exactly it. Before we came on air, John was saying he only goes to Aberdeen for football or gigs. I think, John, we've got another reason for you to go to Aberdeen now, to smack down the law on the Claymore.
Oh, definitely. I love a Claymore. Never even knew what it was, but I fancy it. But also, another wee side thing that happens because of an answer that's been given, Duthie Park. That's where the D33 starts and finishes. Have you ever taken part in that, Chris?
Oh, I've not. It's kind of on the list of races that I'd like to do, but I've never found the time to do. And so I'm really bad at recovering from races. Like after I do a marathon or 100k, I can be it can take me 6 weeks or so to feel quick again. So I kind of need to pick and choose my races, and that's never come out tops. And
because it's always at the start of the year, isn't it? D33. It's kind of early in the year, isn't it? So
So if you're doing a spring marathon, some people who can recover better do it, and also if you're doing ACP, it can be a good stepping stone. But I would worry too much that I would reset myself back to square one if I did it. But when I've not got a big goal, then maybe I could do it for a bit of fun.
Well,
Hmm.
you know what works for you, and we spoke about Metro. But do you have a running coach, a specific running coach?
No, that's something I've thought about a lot over the years, but I think the older I get, the more entrenched I probably get in being stubborn, and I would probably become I might have become uncoachable over the years, but I like to
What
take
a
advice from
statement!
people. Yeah, I like to take advice from people, but I'm not sure I can take instruction. So
Great way to put it. I like that.
Okay. Uncoachable. We're going for quote of the year in the unawards pretty soon, so get that in there. Oh man. Okay, so we're here to speak about events recently in Bangalore. We've already had a great chat just opening this up. But what we want to do, Chris, is talk really about from the ACP earlier on in the year at Perth, around the best lap in Scotland, yeah, and how that day led to what happened subsequently. So starting at ACP, what was that, March time? Is it you, John? March?
yeah, I think it will be March. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then you had a good day out that particular day.
Yeah, so yeah, it was certainly yeah, it felt like a bit of a return to form in the 100K after a couple of years of ACP where I wasn't quite happy with how I'd run, and they released the GB selection criteria maybe a week or two before the race, and the standards had kind of shifted considerably. I think they'd been something like so there's an A standard and a B standard, and the A had been 6:45-ish, and I think something like 7 hours had been the B standard the previous time. So that's kind of what I had been expecting, and then they shifted it to be 6:38 and 6:50. But then the extra thing that they added in was that the first two with the A standard were auto-selected. So it gave me a bit of a conundrum. Do I chase that A standard and the guaranteed selection or whatever, or do I think that's too high a risk? So I decided that that was a risk, and I would effectively bet that not enough people were going to run faster than 6:40, and so my plan was to run 4 minute kilometers regardless of what else was going on for as long as possible, and hope that people that had gone out looking for the A standard came backwards.
I was about
And
to
then I
ask
did.
you a silly question. What finish time does 4 minute kilometers give you? But then I just think to myself, 4 times 100, Stephen. Yeah, it's
Which
400
it gets you
minutes.
6:40.
Right. Okay. You have that etched
But no,
into
yeah,
your.
but that's why I perhaps don't realize that that's the question to ask, because yeah, I've been obsessed with the 4 minute kilometer for long enough that I know exactly what it gets me.
Yeah,
But
you
yeah,
could dial right into it. Yeah,
I've
John.
got a couple of questions. I'm going to go with one that's really important to me to understand. What's it like to be selected to run for your country and pulling that vest on?
yeah, well, it's fantastic. It's very much taps into the kind of the childhood dream sort of thing of I'm not sure I knew I wanted to run for Scotland, but whatever sport I considered like well, to be honest, I'd probably like to play football for Scotland rather than run for Scotland, but that's not where we are. But yeah, it's fantastic, and like the kit's great, just the feeling of wearing it, and it feels like a vindication of all of your training as well to have the selection. So it's fantastic, and it's yeah, I love doing it. And it's even more so when it's in Perth. Because yeah, there is a bit of an atmosphere. I think like you could hear the sound of Dougie finishing this year from from all the way across the other side of the Inch, and I'm not sure that was the case when it was an Englishman that won 2 years previously. And yeah, the number of people that come out to watch in Perth is great. So yeah, it very much feels there's a lot of good things about running the ACP in Perth, but yeah, one of them is the kind of home advantage feel.
Brilliant, good to hear. A slight digression. Who's your footballing heroes? We mentioned Ian Rush. Who did you dream about being when you were a kid?
Well, Stephen Gerrard, of course. I suppose that there are many. Yeah, probably Michael Owen before that. But yeah, we don't talk about him anymore. But yeah, I think as a Liverpool fan of my age, it's you can't look much past Stephen Gerrard as being the ultimate. I know you might not be so fond of him, but
he's a decent player. He's a decent
player.
What about from the north of Scotland, Aberdeen? Heroes up there?
Yeah, not heroes to the same level. I think I don't know whether I would pick players from when I was a kid, or well, to be honest, the team now is great. Like it's great seeing them do well.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't say I have one single Aberdeen player that I would imagine I was. I was always a Liverpool fan more than an Aberdeen fan. So.
Okay, that's cool. I was a big fan of Doug Rugby. If you remember Doug Rugby, I am. But I remember Doug Rugby. What a player he was. Who was the other boy, Stephen? Was it McMaster? Was it Stephen McMaster or John McMaster?
Who that?
Don't know. Anyway, sorry.
The late 70s, early 80s here, Chris.
I've seen a lot of football. I've ate a lot of pies in Aberdeen and fish and chips, man. I've been all these places. Anyway, sorry, let's bring it back.
Squared up to a lot of seagulls.
I asked you what it was like to run for Scotland. And my other question, bringing it back to that 4-minute kilometres metro, here's my segue, is almost like a metronome. You know what your body can do, and to run that 4-minute kilometres. And you were saying that you were banking on other people falling back a wee bit. How did your plan pan out in March in the North Inch?
So part of kind of what I had hoped before was, so what normally happens in ACP is there's somebody and a small group that charge off at stupid pace, kind of world record sort of pace. And I remember actually being quite disappointed in Perth this year in the first couple of laps that didn't really happen. But it was maybe even slightly better that there was a pack just ahead of me and it was going at a sensible but fast pace. But then around 20 kilometers or so, they increased. And I think that was a bit like, the frog in the boiling water thing. So the people that were in that group, they thought that they'd set out sensibly. And then the pace increased to kind of 350s or whatever. And then before they knew it, they were cooking themselves. And so that meant that there were a lot of good runners ahead of me in that group that either faded and came back or didn't finish. But the difficulty there is when you're waiting for people to come back to you is you have to run a long time waiting. It can be 4 hours before you get a payoff for being a bit more conservative in your pacing. So you need to be kind of confident in that and believe that people will come back. But they do, and in the last couple of 100Ks I've done, and also the first one, I've had a kind of definitely a period of feeling absolutely fantastic around 70K, and I don't know if that's at all like a physiological thing or the caffeine, or if it is just the feeling that you get when you start to having hours of being chasing people that are getting further away and further away and further away. When they suddenly start coming back, it's and that your plan might come to fruition, and it is a nice feeling. And sometimes it's not it can be kind of a bit double-edged if it's like a teammate or a friend or somebody that you've trained with that comes back and you don't know what to say to them. That can be a bit difficult. But as you move up the placings, yeah, I do enjoy that. And so I was being told from the 10th in Perth this year, you're in 20th, you're in 15th, you're in 10th, and then it was kind of, for a while it felt like it was a place every lap, and then suddenly they stopped telling me about the places and they started telling me about the time, and I kind of switched in my head. I was like, oh, sounds like I'm not catching the guys in in front then. And yeah, that was true, because they had about 4 minutes or 5 minutes on me. So but that was late on, so I just had to hold on from there.
That's late on, but I'm intrigued by the early on, and you're saying about sometimes it's 4 hours.
Yeah, so 4 hours is
how do you stay disciplined?
60K.
How do you stay disciplined for that time? Is there a temptation? You mentioned about that pack stretching away. How hard is it to stay at your pace, to run your game, rather than get sucked into going faster a wee bit? Or is that just something that you've perfected yourself through the experience of running these events?
So it is hard, but I think it's something which suits me a bit, because I'm quite a planner, and I don't go into a race like this without having a plan. One of the reasons I love the Road 100K is that if I'm in the North Inch, I'm passing go every 10 minutes. It's so easy to control things. There's no well, that small lump by the owl feels like Mount Everest by the time you're finished, but there's no real climbs that you need to think, oh, this kilometer is going to be slower, the next one's going to be faster, or factor anything in. Like, I know that my job is simple. I just need to run at this pace, and I believe I can run at that pace. So I find that suits me, but I do recognize that there is a temptation to not stick to that plan. And definitely I found myself asking, like, am I leaving it too late? Am I still going to be able to catch these guys? And actually, it only would have taken one more member of the group in front of me to stick with that. Then I probably wouldn't have gone to the World Championships. And actually, if you asked me before, how many people would I expect to run the A standard in Perth, I'd have said probably 1. And actually it was 3. So in a way, I was lucky with my gamble that there wasn't another person faster. But the times improve every year in the 100K at the moment. The time before I did it in 2019 was the first time there were ever more than one finisher under 7 hours. So that was 3. That was when it was Charlie Harper, Rob Turner, and Kyle Gregg. And then, so the next time was Perth 2022, and I think there were 7 or so. And I think this year maybe 10. I don't know. I don't know the exact figure, but it increases every year, and it's not just 10 people just under 7 hours. It's 10 right down to 3 of them at 6:35 this year. So it's kind of it's becoming difficult to keep on track with exactly what you need to run to win or to podium or to get a vest at these races, which is great, but it can make it difficult.
What's your thoughts on that, though? Is it like that Roger Bannister doing a 4-minute mile? He does it, and then the next week or two, another couple of guys do it, because he's done it. It gives that belief is passed on. But there's also changes all the time with kit, with nutrition.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Chris?
Well, I think it's both of those things and also some others. So I think that you'd be daft not to see a connection between 2019 being the first time there were the numbers under 7 hours increased, and super shoes, which came, I think it was around 2018 that everybody started wearing them. So there's clearly a connection there. But the shoes haven't changed that much between now and 2019. So I think from there, it's maybe that invited a lot more fast marathoners in. Because like if I look at the team that I was out in India with, then kind of there were I think the rest of the team were mostly sub 220 marathoners, which I think those guys weren't necessarily doing the 100K a decade ago. You might get one, but you don't get the numbers of fast marathoners. And then the last kind of part of that equation, I think, is just the competition. As you alluded to, that now if you want to win the Anglo Celtic Plate, you definitely need to be running able or capable of running sub 640, but you probably need to have it in you if you needed to run 630. That's not been a winning time for quite a long time, but I think if somebody wanted to go into the race with a view into winning it, they'd need to be potentially capable of doing that. So I think that's changed the way people have trained and the way people have approached the race, and then also, yeah, the fact that you have a group as well that will help people. So yeah, I think it's there's a few factors at play, and it's difficult to pinpoint which one's dominant, but I think probably all of them a little bit.
I love that analysis. That's a great question, John. Do you think it's got more prestigious as well during that time? Do you know, it's when I feel anyway personally that it's, you know, the prestige associated with ACP is on the rise. We've obviously been big parts of that, Chris. Let's just
possibly
yeah.
have.
I jest.
No, but it just takes like the more people that hear of it through podcasts like you, the more people get involved in it, and then the better runners come along to it, the more people have heard of it. And I think that it's difficult for me to say whether it's got more prestigious, because since like while I've been doing it, it's been the complete goal, and so it's almost like, to me, it is the ultimate prestigious race. But I know that there's a lot of people that have never heard of it, and yeah, there'll be you could definitely make an argument that it's still quite a small, like the vibes around it are very much like a small event rather than like a big major marathon. But yeah, I think that the quality of runners in it has increased, maybe not entirely in your first, like the guy in first, but I think that you'll have a quality runner in 10th now, whereas you might have had maybe not quality runners is the wrong word, but you'll have somebody that might be winning prestigious races in 5th, 10th, 15th or whatever now, where that wouldn't have been the case.
You've not got people there, for want of a better phrase, making up the numbers, if you see what I mean. So it's like, I used to be at 5-a-side team. It's like that. Oh no, we've not got 5-a-side. Well, we'll get Watty. He'll come and play for us. You've got 5 first team starters there.
Yeah.
And that depth of the field is maybe what I'm getting at. The depth of the field on the up, because of that shift away from, this is for marathon runners wanting to a bit of longevity. I don't know how long that you're at the peak of your marathon game for, but perhaps if your marathon times are starting to plateau, then is 100K becomes, wait a minute, this is going to mix things up for me and maybe make me even more competitive, and could be, we've got a podcast all on its own here. We're not even taken off yet to India.
But see, just before we go to India, I think that I've only witnessed 3 or 4 Anglo Celtic plates at Perth. This year was amazing. All the nations were smashing it. There was athletes from all nations absolutely having a phenomenal day. It was brilliant. It was the noisiest it's ever been. And as Chris said, it's probably the busiest I've seen it. But the athletes were performing at such a high level. It's brilliant. It's great to witness and great to see. And that's a bit I think we try and encourage listeners to come along. You're getting to see athletes like yourself, Chris, close up, run beside them. Well, for a wee bit. Because
and the women's race this year was
phenomenal
step change in just like, it wasn't just one phenomenal runner in because Sarah Webster had been in Craigavon the year before, and I think she ran more or less the same time, give or take a few seconds. But the fact that that full podium were, I think they might be 1, 2, 3 all time or close to that. Were run just in that one day. So and the 50k as well. There were two guys ran 2:48 in the 50k, and so I think they both would have been a national, or the second would have been a national record if the first wasn't there. So yeah, that's one of the nice things about it, and there's still a real kind of low key feel to it. Kind of, you're walking past dog walkers that have no idea what you're doing, or you're running past dog walkers that have no idea you're doing, but then you're also involved in a race that, it feels like you're making history and that you're rewriting the record book this year. And the same happened in 2022 and in 2019 as well. The kind of UK all-time lists were quite different at the end of each of those races.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Right, let's fly, right? But before we fly, March to December, it's almost a calendar year. You've got your place in Bangalore, but what happened? What do you do, Chris, between then and preparing for Bangalore? What were you taking part in events, or was it simply a case of focused on training runs?
So I didn't have my place until I think that was July, either late July or early August, when the kind of selection meeting was. So the selection window actually continued in terms of qualifying. So there were opportunities for other people to run faster times, and 2 years ago they only took 4 in the men's team to the World Championships in Germany. So I was 4th at ACP this year, but there were kind of other people that had time. So Jarlath McKenna, who won last year, he already had the A standard, but I think for him it was a case of proving fitness, which he very much did at the West Island Way. And then there was Comrades as well. So it doesn't need to be 100k you run to qualify. You can have an equivalent from I think any race over 80 kilometers, which I'm pretty sure that line of the selection policy is aimed almost entirely at Comrades. So because I don't think they want people that are, because if you were to run a fantastic placing at Comrades, then that would make the a pretty equivalent to a great 100k. And I think that's probably so Alex Milne, who was also in the team, he just had the B standard from ACP, but I think it was probably the Comrades run. I think he was top 10 certainly. I don't know exactly what he was, but top 10 at Comrades is serious running. So I think that helped his cause as well. So I'm digressing slightly, but
that's good
there
context.
So I didn't know that I was going to be in the team until it was picked, because probably am I don't know exactly how the list goes, but if they'd have only taken 5, then there's a reasonable chance that that's not me. So I knew that it was always going to be touch and go. So until I knew that I was picked, I very much wasn't on the kind of, I was, well, I suppose I was leaving the year full, but I wasn't kind of assuming that I was going. So you also asked what other kind of running I did in that time. So I kind of had it in my head that I was going to do lots of fun stuff, some short 10Ks. I'd entered a kind of a 50k uphill race in Italy when we were on holiday over there. But I actually had a bit of a bad summer in terms of those chest infections that were going around. I think everybody had coughs earlier this year, so I had quite a bad cough, and then I coughed one morning, and something suddenly hurt my chest, and I think I tore one of the intercostal muscles. So it was everything was quite painful for pretty much most of June, which kind of ruled out doing all the fun stuff. And then by the time I was kind of happy enough to start doing proper training again, it was time to kind of have a bit of a pre-build ahead of, or even before I before I got the selection, I thought I need to get my mileage up and start training seriously. So I didn't enter lots of races for fun in the summer as I wanted to, but all turned out okay in the end.
So you
All right. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right. I'm just come in there. I was just thinking, so from finding out that you were on the trip, you must have been thrilled at that news, Chris, when you got the confirmation that you were on the plane, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was thrilled, but it was also it felt like quite a relief because I'd spent months worrying about it, and like it would have. I was really disappointed not to run well enough 2 years ago to make the team, and I was just worried in the weeks leading up to that about how frustrating it would be a nearly man, even more of a nearly man. So I was really thrilled to make it, but I think I'd worked myself up so much beforehand that probably kind of a bit of relief was maybe the dominant emotion at the time.
We've spoken about football, right? And we'll speak about the last 5 minutes of a game of your team. If you're winning 2-1, that's what I would call squeaky bum time, right? But March to July is a long squeaky bum time, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
A lot of things can happen in there. So it must have, I can almost sense your relief when you were speaking about that, Chris. So brilliant. What sort of, let's get on the ground in Bangalore. What was your fitness like? How were you feeling?
I felt pretty good, yeah. So the training had gone well. I'd maybe done slightly more mileage than the previous block, and that I'd seemed to survive that okay. Sessions, maybe I didn't feel super nippy. Sometimes before 100k, I feel like I would PB in a 5k or anything, but I'm not sure I would have a few weeks ago. But other than that, all my long runs felt good. So yeah, I went in kind of confident and raring to go by the time we got there, really. It felt like a long block, perhaps too long. I think maybe because I'd had a few problems over the summer, I maybe started my block maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier than I maybe would have otherwise, because I felt I had to kind of make up for lost ground, but it meant that by November I was kind of knackered, and it felt like a long training block, and I was very much looking forward to having it over in that sense as well. But yeah, I felt fit and I felt ready to run, and I was looking forward to it.
Cool.
And then tell us, Chris, how that whole process, I mean, there's a lot of logistics and stuff involved in getting a team. How many runners in total was there between the male and female
10.
teams?
So
10
there were
runners.
6 men and 4 women, and then we had Walter, Adrian, and Debbie as the and then as the kind of main support crew, and then also Dougie's wife Jenny, and Joe's wife Deb also came up as kind of additional helping hands.
So, getting that, team kit sorted out, I'm assuming it was all Nike stuff. I was noticing it
Yeah,
looked quite swanky.
Fantastic. Yeah. You get so much of it as well, because I suppose it's because you're expected to wear it from the moment you leave the house to the moment you get home. So if you're away for a week, and a lot of it's white as well. So if you're going to be eating curries, wearing a white tracksuit, you need a few changes of clothes.
Of course.
Well, I certainly do.
Yeah. And was it meet up in London? Was it fly from? Did you meet up? Where did the team?
So the instruction we had was to be at the hotel for a certain time on the Wednesday, I think it was. But in reality, I think most of us got the same flight from Heathrow. So
Okay.
I met up with Dougie and Adrian were sat in the Giraffe in Heathrow. So I stumbled across them there and found them, and then gradually we increased our numbers. But yeah, there were some that some that met us out there later in the day, but yeah, most of us actually got the same flight from London.
And tell us first impressions of, is it first visit to India?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
first time I've been here.
Bangalore was the destination. Was that like about the size of Perth or Dundee maybe?
I don't know how big it is, but yeah, I would guess it's maybe. No, actually, I'm not even going to guess the number of millions because I'm going to be so far off. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a. So my first impression was like the surprise at how fancy it is. So I think the airport's brand new, but I've never been in an airport that felt as big and as shiny and plush as that. And then when we get out the airport, I was expecting the roads to be absolute chaos, but the first few kilometers into town, it was a pristine highway with nobody there. But that didn't last. By the time we were into town, it was complete chaos with tuk-tuks beeping at everybody all the way and weaving in and
Yeah.
out. But
That
first
more
impression was very much
stereotypical.
that it's
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it's
And
it's quite a chaotic place. Like certainly in terms of the roads, but yeah, it was. I think because it's a finance or not a finance, it's because it's a tech center. It very much felt more like a big city rather than kind of. I'm sure there are poor parts of the city, but what we saw was very much more skyscrapers than Slumdog Millionaire.
good way of putting it. Good way of putting it.
You mentioned curries. Can we speak about? Did you have any curries you'd never had before?
Come on.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I didn't recognize many of the words on the curries. So we only ate in the hotel because we were all a bit worried about getting deli belly.
Yeah.
And that feels really boring in one sense. I think if I were there as a tourist, I'd be going out wanting to eat everywhere and try everything, but I wasn't there as a tourist.
You're there for a job. You're there for the job.
Yeah, but
yeah.
the food in the hotel was fantastic, and I don't know whether it was local to Bangalore, but it was stuff that I'd never seen or tried or heard of. So yeah, I think by the time we got to race day, we all needed to kind of tone down how much we were being adventurous at the because it was a buffet setup, so you just took as much as you wanted and what you wanted. But yeah, I was the first couple of nights I was up in the night popping Gaviscons because I'd overdone it a bit. Because they've got the curry. I don't know whether you're meant to eat them for breakfast or if they just don't change the food that often. But there's curry there at breakfast and at lunch and at dinner. Yeah,
curry's fine. I can just imagine under the watchful eye of the support team watching how the portion sizes that are getting shuffled down as well. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Humidity and heat. I assume I associate India as being humid and very, very warm. Is that the case?
Yeah. It was. It felt kind of okay in the shade, I would say, when we were kind of going about in Bangalore, because it's quite a leafy city in terms of like the park has a lot of trees in them, and also some of the buildings are quite tall. So there's a lot of shade, and in the shade it didn't feel too warm. But the moment you got a bit of sun, especially in the middle of the day, you were like, oh, whoa! Suddenly you felt like you were you felt like you were roasting. So, but in the race, I think it was maybe 20 or 21 at the start, and so I unsurprisingly have been quite concerned about the heat beforehand. So I'd taken out a couple of thermometers and I gave them to Adrian, who was crewing for me, and I said, "Can you tell me on every lap what the temperature is?" Because I wanted to adjust my pace before I felt cooked. If it was getting hotter, or speed up if suddenly a cold front had come in and it was actually Aberdeen temperatures and I was being overcautious. That didn't happen. But so they told me the temperature a few times, and then they kind of stopped telling me the temperature. But I was like, fine. I've kind of got into how fast I want to run by this point. But it was only later that I discovered that the reason they stopped telling me the temperature is that they'd taken the thermometer and it had been on a tour of sitting in all the hottest places they could find in the sun. So I feel slightly guilty for being part of the fake news. And if you look through all of the Instagram posts and Strava posts of all the other athletes from all the other teams, a lot of them have pictures of thermometers at 45 degrees, which it was, I don't know how hot it got to. I think it maybe got up to about 30 or so. But there's all these pictures
Love it.
of my thermometer at 45 degrees because it's been
Oh,
sat there in the sun with
And
as much
exactly.
around it to focus the rays onto it.
And you,
it's like that competition where you in that one hot day in the summer and everybody's car thermometer's at like 26 and really it's 18 or something like that and folk are going, it's an absolute swelter and oh, they're
I
hard.
think people buy a black car especially so that they can heat up their car thermometer.
Oh man, love that.
you mentioned about the trees and the loop was around the botanical gardens, wasn't it? So was it? What was it like in
It was
there?
an agricultural college.
Agricultural college. So
You'd be right at home.
it would be a wee bit.
Yeah.
It'd be a wee bit warmer than the North Inch in Perth, though. But was the trees high enough to give you shade at parts, or was it exposed on the lap?
It was a bit of each. I'm not sure what percentage I would say was covered, but maybe about half and half.
Okay.
You could still kind of the trees weren't thick enough that nothing was getting through. Like you could still see a shadow through the leaves, but I experimented a bit with. I was wearing a white cap, and I definitely found that when I went through the trees, it felt cooler taking it off.
Okay.
So there was enough shade that was the case, but and that definitely did help. But when the air temperature is 30 and it's a bit muggy, the shade is nice, but it doesn't entirely solve the problem. But I like my thoughts when it was announced it was going to be in India. I kind of thought I want to get to the point that I see the conditions as an opportunity rather than a problem. Because again, 100k lures people off to go way too fast, and if that can punish people more, so that was kind of the mindset I had, was that I wanted to A, be well prepared for the heat, and B, hope that the heat made the rate, or the difficult conditions made it harder for everybody else as much as it does for me. And I think so. If you look at the way the team performed, I think that because we were all scared of the heat, we did proportionally better than teams from maybe lower latitudes where they might not be quite so scared of 25 or 30 degrees. So I think because we all spent a lot of time in the sauna or other sort of heat adaptation methods, and then we all adjusted our heat accordingly. Whereas I think there were some other athletes, maybe from countries where 30 degrees is a more normal temperature, who still went out at kind of close to world record pace regardless, and suffered, maybe not even the second half, suffered pretty quickly.
Anglo Celtic Plate, there's the home nations running. In Bangalore, there's 31 nations being represented. So what was it like? What was the volume like? How did that feel, Chris?
So there's definitely a lot more people. I think maybe the main difference is the numbers that were out in front, because I've done a lot of races that are bigger than the Anglo Celtic Plate, kind of outside of 100k. So it wasn't like the sort of Stramash at the start of cross country or anything. But I think maybe the thing that was different is just the number of people who are willing to go out really fast in 100k. So I've not actually seen what my placing was at 5k, 10k, 15k, but I would say that I was probably outside the top 50. And there were actually there were women that we were passing, not late on, but it had gone out hard enough that we were still passing. There were still women ahead of the group that I was in, maybe 30k in, and there were some great women in the race, but they weren't the ones that I was expecting out in front, because I knew that some of the French women and the British women were the favourites. and then to be seeing others out in front of it, you realise both the quality of runners and the depth of the runners, but also there's enough people there that there's always going to be somebody that goes out at suicide pace.
And they were expecting, before that started, they were expecting over 200 plus athletes to be running. But did the width of the track, was that able to accommodate that, or was it a tight squeeze at points?
It was a tight squeeze at points, but I don't think it really had too much of an effect. So in the first lap or so, if you really wanted to be at the front, you might have been kind of running in the gutter a bit. But maybe it's my attitude to things. Like I would say in 100K year, like I would always prefer to run in a comfortable racing line than have the position on the road until, well, I suppose until the last 100 meters. Like, who cares if you're a few meters behind somebody, just to kind of not be tripping over potholes and when you've got a long way to go. So it wasn't too much of an issue for me, but I do know that like the road conditions weren't that great, and there were a few potholes and tree roots and things like that. So I think early on, I think there were maybe a few people that had like. So I'd fallen over by the end, but there were a few people quite early on had a few kind of scrapes and kind of looked like they'd fallen over at some point. So that might have been from an early rammy, but I didn't see that.
Was there a chance to get a foot on the route before?
On the tree roots?
No, to actually run a lap, so you know what to avoid.
Yeah, no, so we didn't do that, but a lot of teams did. So that it was maybe about 45 minutes drive from the hotel. So I think we decided that it would be nice to see the route, but it was kind of unessential, and if it just kind of added extra stress to the day before the race, then we wouldn't bother, and that was kind of the conclusion within the team.
Cool.
But we'd seen kind of videos of what it looked like, and which it never quite prepares you for it. But yeah, I think in a perfect world, I probably would have wanted to do a lap of the route, but I knew that like you get to know if you're running. So it was 20 and a bit laps. So by the time you've run 3 of them, you know the course, and so it doesn't really matter. Like, as a control freak, I would have liked to get on the course, but it wasn't. I don't think it was important, and I don't think it made any difference to the result.
I was just asking that because I'm thinking about the volume of runners. That first couple of laps, you might not have been able to see where there is a pothole that might have caused an issue. But anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and that might be why there were a couple of early followers.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that. What's the Scottish term? You were manky at some point, so you must have had a wee trip somewhere along the way.
Yeah, so it was right at the end. It was about 500 meters to go. I think I was maybe not concentrating properly, and I tripped over a speed bump and went down into the ditch at the side of the road. And to me, it felt like I was down for an eternity, but I can't even see it on my Strava. So it must have been more of a roll than a fall. But a Spanish guy did catch me just after that. But I think the adrenaline of the fall helped me keep him behind me after that. But it was literally less than 2 minutes from the end. Yeah.
Manel, 3 seconds you beat him by.
What was your name? Sorry, your name. What was your expectation on the start line, Chris? What was your hopes and expectations?
So I didn't really have a time expectation, because I felt that the nature of the course and the conditions meant that became a bit of an irrelevance. But I'd looked through kind of the international rankings and kind of previous World Championships, and I kind of decided that top 50 was a sort of thing that I would be able to dress up as a success, but it might have been a poor run in that regards, and I decided that top 30 was about par, just based on if we all lined up on paper with our PBs and qualifying times, and then so I said top 20 would be a solid run, and kind of top 10 would be kind of the kind of best possible. Like given that they like the quality of some of the other runners, like the Japanese. So I was 16th in the end, which probably, I think is a fairly fair result in terms of, when I relate to that, so top 20 being a solid good run, and 16th. So I feel that the run that I did was probably what I would have liked to have done. So I think I was probably correct in what I thought a good run needed to be and what a good run would get.
You're being very modest there. 16th, just listeners, just take that. And 16th in the world at 100k is, a stunner if you ask us, Chris. So it's a take a bow, son moment. Yeah.
Thank you.
But that meant that I was noticing that there was quite a pack of GBR runners at similar times. Is it fair to say?
Yeah. So that maybe looks more a pack on paper with
Right.
regards to me. So the other 5 men in the team ran together for most of the race. So I kind of knew that I probably would end up going out a bit slower. I'd actually worked out a formula in terms of how fast I wanted to go. So in terms of if it were in a North Inch in Perth, I would have run at 3:57s. But I did a lot of research and decided that I was going to add on 1 second per kilometer for the altitude, and I was going to add on 1 to 2 seconds for each degree over 15. And that was just, I tried to come up with like percentages or whatever, and then when it was close enough to that, I was like, right, that'll do. The maths is easy. So I'm, as I said, I like to plan these things and I like to have an idea of what I want to do. I didn't want to get kind of sucked into going too fast. So I wanted the rest of the team to very much do their own things rather than feel that I needed to just go 1 second or 2 seconds faster to keep up. So I ended up getting into a group with, well, it was a group of 2 to start with, of me and a Croat called Dejan, and then Martin Muller from the German team, who's a clubmate of mine. He joined us, so we were. He was with us from about 30k, but me and the Croat were maybe from 10k to 60k to get together. And I said what my plan in terms of adjusting the pace with the temperature, and he said that sounded great, let's do that. And so we very much stuck together. But we could, since it was elapsed with an out and back bit in the middle, I could see ahead. So eventually we could see that I could see that the rest of the team were all running together. And so at about halfway there, I think they had 7 minutes on us. And that was when I started to think, am I leaving this too late? Do I need to start getting involved in the race if I'm 7 minutes down? And I've since also thought, oh, did I push too early? So the fact that I've worried about both of those things probably means that I've not got it far wrong in either direction. But it was interesting to watch the 5 of them, in that from maybe 60k or so, they were starting to fragment as a group. But it was since it was just under 5k a lap, so you would see them every 20 minutes or so. But the order changed between them almost every time for maybe until 70k or so. And then it started to become kind of a clearer order that Alex Milne was way out in front. And then Jarlath McKenna, the Northern Irish guy, he was next. The two Turners, not brothers. They swapped places in the order a few times, and actually the Irish runner who I'd run with at ACP, Kieran McGonigal, he was actually with them for a lot of that. Dougie was the one that kind of dropped back more, and I think he'd had a bit of a hip issue in his taper, and I think that had started to seize up, and then he'd had some problems with his quads. But other than that, the rest of that group stayed quite a long time, and yeah, it's I would have liked to have caught them, but in terms of getting a medal, it wouldn't have made any difference to us had I caught them or not. But yeah, I was a long way off them earlier in the race, and I suppose that's the other key thing, is that before the race, I very much considered that my role in the team was not to shoot for the stars and try and win the race. And I don't think anybody in our or certainly in the men's team had those sort of expectations. But if I were to imagine the selection meeting, the justification for putting me in the team would be that I've kind of got experience and I've had a record of being fairly conservative in the pacing, and so I would be a reliable finisher, and probably a reliable, not bad finisher, rather than somebody that you would expect to be kind of going for the medals. And I think when you go into somewhere like India, where it's even more attritional, the percentage of people having a bad run are higher, then taking somebody like me you're doing it as an insurance policy, so that if your superstars fly too close to the sun and get burnt, then you're not necessarily doing yourselves out of a team medal. So I very much knew that my role was not to go off and try and beat my teammates. My role was to kind of be there, so that
Insurance policy.
If I was needed, an insurance policy, so that if half of them DNF'd, then we'd still have a reasonable chance of a medal. And as it was, the guys did a great job, so the insurance policy wasn't needed. But I'm not sure I would do anything differently.
It was a strong insurance policy.
Definitely. I think Stephen's right when he's saying, Chris, you're being very modest. That was I nearly did the swear thing. That was a phenomenal run. Congratulations, honestly. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Really well done. And let's talk about the teams.
Mm-hmm.
If we talk about them, the male team finished third overall to pick up a medal, and the female team finished second overall. So that's not a bad day out, really, is it?
Yeah. And I think that was probably the main goal for most of us. Well, certainly for the men's team. I think I didn't get the impression that anybody had any kind of individual goals more than that were greater than the allure of trying to get the team medal. I think we all knew that getting a team medal would be kind of the most enticing achievement that we could get from the day. On the women's side, we had stronger contenders, because of course Sarah got an individual bronze, so she was in a race herself there. But they'd also spoken beforehand that the team medal was a big goal as well. So
I love
happy with that.
Sarah, second runner up on the rather than third place, John.
Our team prize said second runner up too.
Yeah.
So
second runner up.
We're not third, we're second runners up. You can say the runner up bit quietly.
I like that. Do you know what? That's something that caught my eye was the male winner was quite far out in advance of the rest of the field. Jumpy Yamaguchi, just to get this week's Japanese word of the week. Is he some kind of like Messi or Ronaldo type character?
He must be. That I think to run, it's probably difficult to understand from home just looking at results, but to run that time on that course, it was like the heat is one thing, but had it been the weather of Perth, it still would have been a fantastic, or it still would have been very difficult to run a fast time just because. So the elevation, it wasn't like by ultra standards, hilly, lots of climbing, but it was a lot more than a kind of quote unquote fast 100k course. If you were doing one loop as a 5k race, everyone would complain that it was hilly. And then the road surface wasn't ideal either. So I think if you consider just how close he was to the world record in a race like that, it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
The performance there, I can't quite get my head around quite how quick he ran. And the Japanese went out as a group. Well, maybe three out of the four went out as a lead pack, and they were flying. It was early on, so a 5 kilometer loop, and I don't know when, but it was quite early on in the race that they lapped us. So the other two faded that were from his group, but they still ran pretty fast times. I think one of them was 6:40 and the other was maybe around 7 hours. I can't remember. But for him to keep that going and run 6:12, yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's like get a selfie of him after it. He's like, swap your shirt, mate.
So I did. There is a bit of shirt swapping that goes on, and so one of the guys had swapped with one of the French guys. Kind of, it's more like spare bits of kit because you don't swap your vest because you've only got one of those. But like the kind of t-shirts that we get for training in. But so one of the guys had swapped with the French for a bit of the French kit, and that's really nice kit. And that got us all thinking, oh, shall we do this too? So we all went upstairs and got a bunch of kit, and then we looked around and was like, all right, who will want to swap? And the Japanese have really nice kit. But so me and one of the other guys went up to ask if they wanted to swap. But I realized as soon as we got there that they didn't really want to. And I don't think they get that much kit, but they also didn't speak that much English. But the problem is that they're so nice. So I ended up kind of, I suppose, styling it out slightly that, or it was someone else that was with them that spoke better English kind of suggested it, and then I jumped onto the idea of swapping the t-shirt that I had for a green t-shirt with his name on it that I think his mum must have gave him like for his support crew. But so I've got, it's not Jumpy, it's the guy that was the world champion the last time round. His name's Haruki something. But yeah, that was it. Yeah. So yeah, I've got a t-shirt with his name on it, and I checked with, you know how Google Translate, you can get it to read the Japanese writing. So I checked, and it does say that it says Haruki Okayama on it. So yeah, I've got that. Nice. So that's my shirt swapping, because I felt really bad when I realized that they didn't want to give up there, because I think they maybe don't get, but they have really nice Hoka kit. So that was why we'd gone over and asked.
But Chris, he'll be up the road. He'll be up the road saying, "I've got Chris Richardson's t-shirt." That's what he'll be doing. Saying it to his pal.
Yeah, he'll be on Young Hearts on 3 Japanese edition going, guys, this guy came up to me, Scottish guy, he was like, any chance for a shirt swap? I was like, you're not getting my match worn, mate. You can hear this. My morgan, mate.
Well, just
you'll have to look out for him in Tokyo.
Well, we can give Steve will take some stickers across with him. There you go, mate. That's for Chris.
No problem. I will make hands across the ocean. That's great. I love hearing these wee anecdotal stories, Chris. Thank you.
It's a brilliant insight. But you mentioned earlier on, Chris, about recovery, how it takes you to recover. What's your plans now? That was only 9 days ago. What's your plans? First of all, how are you feeling? And what's your planned recovery?
So I felt not too bad since the race. I think my quads are normally the main thing that hurts after a race, and they've not been as bad as usual. And I don't know if that's because with the heat, the limiting factors are a bit changed. It's maybe not muscle breakdown, which is the first thing to happen. It's maybe you never quite get there. But I have been concerned that that's often a risk factor for me is my quads. So I've been trying to do a lot more downhill running or I suppose hills, but the downhills was the goal in my training. So I've done more hills this year than any other year, and so either that or the race conditions have meant my quads aren't as bad as they usually are. My hamstrings have been sore, but they've just about eased off now. So yeah, I feel fine now, but I'm not gonna launch into too much too soon, because I just know from experience that even if I feel okay now, it doesn't mean that I can actually race at the moment. But so yeah, race calendar is completely blank at the moment, and I think I kind of needed that to be the case. Like I'd actually said last year that I wasn't going to do 100K I was going to take a year off doing the 100Ks, and then when it came back to Perth, kind of that changed my mind. I really like running in Perth. It's always special. People come to see my partner's family are from nearby, so they come and watch as well. And like it felt like it wasn't the right time to bow out of the 100K then, and I'm really glad that I didn't. But then even last winter training for Perth this year, I just felt tired. I felt like I needed a break, and I didn't come out of that race thinking I need to do another 100K block, but the opportunity like that only comes around once in a while. So this block again, I think to get through the block and to do more mileage and the extra time of going to the sauna, I've needed to have a bit of a commitment to a blank slate for the start of the year. So the plan for next year is to kind of run for fun, do the training, and see when I feel that I want to race. But probably it'll be kind of wee local races, probably some shorter stuff for a while, and then we'll see how long it takes to get the itch back. But I want to have a bit of a break from having a big goal.
Brilliant.
Sensible.
You've even planned that. I love it. I love that.
Almost like a wee sort of
don't say that
reset.
The official line is I've got no plans, so you can't.
A soft reset is what I'm hearing. You know, just that, like, just
probably. And it might be with the end of January. I've got cabin fever and I need to have a big goal, and I'll sign up for a race. But I'm kind of like the dream is that I'll be able to do some of the kind of smaller local races that I don't feel able to do. Are you saying the Chile 10K? Is that why you're...
The Chile 10K is screaming out for a bit of Chris Richardson, I'd say. So that
I would fall over. It's got hills and gnarly trails in it, doesn't it?
Well, you know what they say about where the magic happens outside your comfort zone.
Imagine Chris Richardson running the Chile 10K with Haruki Okayama's top on. Imagine that, man. That would be something special.
We can make that happen.
That would be something special.
It's happening.
Chris,
what? Wait a minute, John. I want to ask Chris something, because he said something there and it made me remember something that we're having a running rants category in the unawards this year. Chris, get your submission in. Shuts the day. This is Friday. And mostly it's running rants that are around about when you're out running, like people parking on pavements. That is my biggest peeve, pavement parking, right? However, also a kind of running rant that I'm right on board with, for your respect, is people reclining their seat on an aeroplane before you've even had a first drink service.
Yeah. So I had this on both legs on the way to and from. But it's kind of slightly fascinating me, because I've started asking people about this, and around half of the population think it's completely fine, and the other half get irate about it. And I think it's one of those that everybody assumes that everybody else thinks that they do. But I, yeah, so I don't like it when people do that. But I think that I accept it if they wait till after you've been fed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wasn't the case for idolizing the way out, and when you've not had much sleep in the way back, then that's when you get a constant knee in the back.
Aye, and your legs are recovering for 100k effort. Yeah, I'd be like that, mate. You're no reclining your seat quite yet. John, have you got a view on that? Kind that you're a world traveller.
Doesn't trouble me either way.
I see you're a bit level-headed that way, yeah.
No, it doesn't bother me. I personally don't recline. I have my seat upright when I travel, but it doesn't bother me.
John raw dogs it.
No, just what I do, man. Just you know how long it's going to take to get there, so you just fill your head, you fill your space with nothingness or a book or a movie or something. But
I didn't think he's always been this serene, by the way.
It took me a while.
Yeah, what's the secret?
It took me a while to get to this point. So anyway, listen, Chris, you've been in the World Cup, man. We're talking about football earlier on. You've been in the World Cup and you've executed your race, I think, almost perfectly from what your plans were. It's quite brilliant. And I hope you're super proud of yourself, are you? It's okay to blow your own trumpet. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I am. So the fact that I think what I really didn't want is to have a disaster and kind of DNF or come back thinking, why did I do that stupid charging off at world record pace or whatever. So I was very keen for that not to happen. But yeah, I think that probably the how it played out was more or less as good as it could have. But I would say there's always the natural state of a runner is to always think, what if I'd have done 1 minute faster, 2 minutes faster, one place better. So yeah, I would. I'll always kind of wonder, could I have gone faster? But overall, pretty happy with that.
Brilliant. No, I think you should be super chuffed.
Yeah.
Super chuffed.
And before we move on to the last questions, Chris, which we know are vitally important, a tip for Tokyo? Any kind of tip. Doesn't need to be running related at all. In fact, if it's running related, I'd be annoyed.
Have you got your karaoke song sorted?
Hey, karaoke. Absolutely.
So what are you going to sing?
Proclaimers.
Oh, he's going down that 500 miles route, isn't he? Because he's just got to chant it rather than sing it.
Exactly that.
They'll love that.
If no, it'll be Young Hearts Run Free.
Brilliant, man. You can see it now. Awesome. What's your karaoke tune, Chris?
Video footage to get emerged.
Well, I did Waka Waka when over there, and it was so good that the proprietor of the bar that we were in gave me a bottle of sake for free afterwards. So
I'm right, man.
That's a benchmark. Shakira, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a song for the World Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah, and nobody understands the words anyway, so nobody knows if you're getting it wrong. And
it's a good dancing tune as well.
Just noises, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure I can quite carry off the dance moves, but I can shout Waka Waka.
John, it would be amiss of us not to ask you for your karaoke song.
Well, very often I'll just say, play anything, mate, and I'll sing it. But my choice would be The Snake by Al Wilson. It's a Northern Soul tune. It gets people up dancing. It's a good tune as well. So that's the one you can hear me round about. When I'm passing through Nagasaki, that's my song of choice. That, or when I'm passing through a pub in Perth. So
I'm going to batter them all in the playlist. There you go. Feeling generous and festive.
Definitely. Okay, take us there, Stevie boy. Take
Oh,
us
we're
there.
going to Dialect Dictionary before we jump into the
Yep.
playlist. So, Chris, over to you for a submission into the Young Hearts Run Free Dialect Dictionary.
All right, so my submission is not so much local dialect, it's more of a family family phrase, but it's one that I didn't realize was only in my family until I was far too old for it to be acceptable. And it's a phrase which the rest of the world I don't think actually has an alternative word for it. So the fact that it's a bit rude, if you have a better word that I should be using, then I'm all ears. But so have you got a term for unsliced charcuterie sausages? A catch-all term. So it's saucisson, chorizo, salami, and all the other different languages, because we always just use the specific language. So is there a term?
You've
No,
got me.
you're shaking your heads. So the term that's used in my family, and I think I was an adult by the time I found out that it wasn't an accepted term in the rest of the world, is dog stick. So that is my submission to your dialect dictionary. So dog stick for salami, chorizo, saucisson, and all the other kind of local variants of cold sausages.
Brilliant.
Pepperoni.
Yeah. Oh, pepperoni. Yeah. What's in between
So-
pepperoni and salami?
There's regional variations of the no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, there needs to be a word.
Yeah. Pepperami.
Yeah, that's
You know those things.
a brand name.
Yeah. Okay. Doug's dick.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. I love that. See if there's. I think that's the first sort of family one that we've had, isn't it, John? I can't think. I
Family
love
ones are
family
brilliant.
words.
Yeah,
I
they're
know.
brilliant. Because you think everybody else uses them, but it's only you and your household or your family, and then it spreads as your family spreads. It's brilliant. I love it. I love it.
Usually come from my father. He would be. My dad would be. I'm now thinking of a few myself. I'll keep them up for a rainy day.
Okay, right. Music, Chris. Young Hearts Run Free La Buff Collection Volume 9 is our current playlist. An eclectic mix, as they all are, and Stevie Boy is poised and ready to add in the tune or the track that Chris Richardson wants to add into the Young Hearts Run Free playlist. What are you going to bless us with?
So, because your theme for your series is Japan, and I remember before I did Tokyo, I had this one on the playlist on repeat because it's got the lyric "I'd rather be in Tokyo" in it. So that's Belle and Sebastian, "I'm a Cuckoo."
Oh, has that got that lyric in? I love
What
that
a
song.
tune, man! How have Belle and Sebastian not hit the playlist yet, Stephen? They're not, are
I've
they?
not got a bloody clue.
Because
I
we're
seen
fans
them
of
at the
Belle and
opening of the
Sebastian.
Perth Concert Hall.
Aye, we're fans of Belle and Sebastian. Brilliant! Thank you so much for that, Chris. You can
I've
see
also
that we're
not
both.
listened to that song for ages.
You can add it to your. I think you said last week you were doing a Tokyo playlist as well, so you can add it to there.
We'll get a double done on the go. We can both go in.
That's
Brilliant.
on.
Is it, Chris? As I said, this has been a pleasure to speak to you. It almost feels like a 4-minute kilometre, but it's been a lot longer than that. We've been chatting. It's been a brilliant insight to both. We spoke about the ACP for a good half an hour, I think, at the start. But it's been a good journey from there to Bangalore. And the wee insights that you've given us about your own thinking and your mindset, and then to the curries and the swapping of the kit and all that. So I love all that sort of stuff. And then to rattle it off with Dog's Dick, absolutely fantastic. So thank you. I'm going to pass back to Stephen, but thank you very much for your time, Chris.
Chris, I think, between the result, but more so the experience that you've had over there, it's been great for you to regale that to us, and hopefully this is a little moment in time as well that you'll be able to save and let the children listen when they're older, etc. It's an archive. But that measured, planned and executed race that you took us through there was Absolutely. I was smiling away the whole time. It's fantastic. And we've been looking forward, I said that at the start, looking forward to catching up with you. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's been DOS.
Thanks very much for having me on. It's been good fun.